Hello, investors. This is Todd Thomas, Associate Portfolio Manager with Revere Asset Management. Today is Saturday, June 28th. The time is 9:52 a.m. Coming to you from Boca Raton, Florida, to bring you the Revere Roundup Weekend Walkthrough. State of the market, three green up arrows, and yellow sub arrow still on the long-term 21 EMA. Leaders overall acted well this week with some volatility on Friday. Both indexes are well above their 21 and 50-day SMA, and the long-term 200-day moving average is still in the yellow neutral range. What happened last week? We'll go over that. We'll go over the earnings, events, and economic data for the week ahead, and then finally we'll go to the watch list. New feature for the weekend review, going to be the changes on the week of the major indexes that we typically report on a daily basis. This week was a big up week. The big eight, that's the Mag 7, basically up 5.82. So those were the big winners of the week. The RG8 up 3.03%, S&P up 3.44%, S&P equal weight 1.82%, NASDAQ 100 triple Qs up 4.04%, the Q equal weight up 3.07%, Dow Jones up 3.82%, mid caps up 2.56%, Russell 2000 up 3%, 60/40 up 2.2%, GROTECTION up 3.2%, TurboTection down 2.7%. What happened last week? The NASDAQ and the S&P ended the week at all-time highs after a volatile session on Friday. Also this week, 21 of 32 NATO members agreed to raise defense spending by 3.5% of a country's GDP, which helped boost defense manufacturers. Also, oil prices shed the Iran war risk premium, and OPEC announced the possibility of a 440,000 barrel per day output hike. President Trump is planning a series of executive orders to support the growth in artificial intelligence, with an emphasis on expanding the energy infrastructure necessary to support AI, basically sending our energy stocks up on the week. U.S. and China formally agree to implement a trade framework and for the increase of rare earth exports and relaxing the restrictions of tech exports to China. Also, Trump terminates trade discussions with Canada Friday afternoon on the basis of their implementation of a digital service tax on U.S. tech companies. Also, on the economic front, consumer spending softened through the personal consumption, which was down 0.1%. Spending was up 0.1%, both below expectations. And the core PCE inflation overshot the May forecasts, lifting core inflation to 2.7%, basically painting a stagflationary forecast, diminishing the odds of a July cut. Also, the Tesla robotaxi event started off with a bang and ended with disappointment overall. The stock was up on Monday, but then closed and had a rough week ahead with some uncertainties on whether their full self-driving was even close to being ready. Notable positive earnings reports on the week were AVAV, Micron, CCL, FedEx, and Nike. Negative paychecks. For the week ahead, we have a shortened July 4th holiday week with Friday, July 4th off. Tesla reports their Q2 deliveries on Wednesday. The July 4th deadline for the Senate to pass the big, beautiful bill is coming up. And if it passes, then it will go to the House for the final vote. Also, we have the big monthly unemployment numbers for the week. Big winners for the week. WGS was up 36%, as well as a continuation in some of the hot names like Dave. Rocket Lab, Coinbase had a nice week. SoFi in the fintech area. Celestica just keeps powering ahead. OUST in the LiDAR area, and Affirm also. Big losers on the week were CoreWeave and Circle Internet, and basically those were pullbacks after massive runs. Earnings ahead, nothing majorly notable for us that we really care much about. Visiting, since we're about at the halfway point for the year, wanted to visit the overall global markets. Canada up 13%. US is now positive by 5% on the S&P and 5% on the NASDAQ. Mexico up 28% year to date. Brazil 25%. Africa, Germany up a whopping 32%. UK up 17%. South Korea 39%. China up 20%. Wanted to talk about the Golden Cross. We had a Golden Cross on Wednesday of this week in both the QQQs as well as QQQ equal weight, and wanted to show, this is a slide that shows all the occurrences of the Golden Cross, where it was the first occurrence in 12 months. Went over this on our Friday podcast, and you can see in general, straight green across the board on a 1 year later basis. Some negative returns in a few instances throughout the shorter 2, 3, 1 month, 3 month, and 6 month period. But overall, 1 week later, 70% higher with nothing lower than an 80% going on throughout the weeks and months ahead. So pretty bullish overall. Incidentally, we should see a Golden Cross occur on the S&P 500 in the week ahead, as the 50 days only 20 points below the 200 day. And right now we're increasing by about 16, 17 points a day. And that's it. So let's go to the inter-asset correlation. Again, the S&P 500 broke through the 61.47 area that we made back on February 19th on Thursday and Friday. Friday's session was quite volatile, but we did start off at all-time highs on the gap, rallied, pulled back when Trump ended trade discussions with Canada, but then the market was able to power ahead into the close. Equal weight again broke through the 180.18 level, still off the all-time highs of 188.16. So again, indexes mostly being led by the mega cap tech as well as the large cap stocks. Breath still a little bit behind. Q's new all-time highs this week, powering ahead. Basically starting off the week on a down open, but strong close on Monday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, all new all-time high days. Very bullish. Equal weight also overcame the all-time highs intraday, backed off a little bit, but closed at a weekly all-time high. Again, we went over all the returns on the week. S&P 500 up 3.4% on the week. Also, again, well, let me go back here. I think mid-caps up 2.5% on the week. Mid-caps overcame their 200-day moving average on Thursday and Friday. So this is definitely something that's welcome to see. If we can get mid caps and small caps starting to trade nicely above the 200-day moving average, we should see a lot of growth stocks act much better. Right now, it has been very choppy. A lot of stocks do break out, squat. You can have one day where we have substantial strength in certain names, and then the next day it's like nothing ever happened the day before and they give back all the gains. So under the surface, it is pretty choppy out there still. However, definitely big gains being made, but it is choppy. Russell, 2 points below the 200-day moving average after reclaiming it intraday on Friday, but did back off. Again, we'll be welcome to see this overtake the 200-day. The VIX is 16.32, which is very nice, and we welcome that. Ideally getting in the sweet spot of 15 to 12. ARC up 3.12% on the week. The IBD 50, again, ended the week down 1%, but up 2.6% on the week. US dollar down 1.45% on the week. dollar continues to make new lows, and that has been a tailwind for some of the commodities. Copper, especially strong this past week. 30-year bond yields at 4.85. I'm sorry, the 10-year yields are at 4.28. And Bitcoin, with a tight week, up 3.4% after backing off and testing the 50-day moving average. So bullish reversal and undercut there. Semiconductors up 6.1% on the week on the SOX. Semiconductors were a little bit soft on Friday, however, have been on a tear over the past few weeks. SMH, which has a much larger allocation to NVIDIA, ended up 6.9% up on the week, and green by 0.44%. So better than the SOXX, which is more diversified. Uranium also with a nice week up 3.5%. Gold broke the 50-day moving average down 1.8%. And silver down slightly on the week after breaking out 4 weeks ago and consolidating above the 21 EMA. Looking pretty good still. Gold miners down 2.8% on the week and right on the 50-day moving average. And the mags, Round Hill Magnificent 7 up 5% on the week. So definitely indexes being led this week by the Mag 7. So let's go into the Mag 7 this week. And just look at the weekly charts. Apple again still below all its long-term weekly moving averages, barely up at 0.4% on the week. Amazon had a really nice week, up 6.4%. Did break out of this cup with handle base, or it's been vacillating above and below the 200-day moving average. Traded nice volume, nice pocket pivot back above the 200-day. So potentially, actually that's Alphabet. I'm sorry, back above the 200-day moving average. Meta up 7.5% on the week and basically just shy of all-time highs. Microsoft up 3.8%. NVIDIA up 9.6%. Relative strength making new highs, and again continued out of this nice nice wedging type rally here and narrowed up and finally broke out through this big consolidation that it's been in since January, and again overcoming last year's levels also over the last couple weeks. Tesla flat to up 0.4% on the week with a reversal on the robotaxi. Now let's finally get into the watch list. Several names, going to go through it pretty fast. I have it sorted by flag names and then composite rating. Some of these are extended, but also in very strong groups. You can see CCJ's been leading the nuclear area, up 7.3%, but extended. Exxon broke out this week. And basically trotting along above and below its 8 EMA, looking strong. Greedo continued with a nice 9.3% increase on the week into new all-time high territory. Last week had a closing all-time high. This week went into all-time high territories. Toast has been pretty volatile. Again, it's developed a flat base of 12%. Again, this is what I'm talking about, some of the volatility and choppiness in individual names, especially on the smaller and mid-cap side. This isn't, a decent-sized company, but you do see how, again, it had a nice push toward the highs on Tuesday of this past week, completely reversed all those gains, went down to the bottom of the base, held, and had a positive day on Friday. Still pretty volatile action overall in some of these names, but again, building this flat base, so it's a name to keep an eye on. Viva Systems, multi-week tight. Cardo Libre, build a nice flat base and was up 6.5% this week after dipping back and touching its 50-day moving average. Fudu Holdings in China, again, up 6% on the week and chopping along the 21-day moving average. So if you're interested in China stock, one to keep an eye on. Aragon up 8.05% on the week on the sweeping number of executive orders Trump is launching to improve the data center electricity situation. Again, this is a company that provides engineering and construction services, so several of these names are strong. It should be on your watch list. CSE had a nice bounce this week off a shakeout below the 21 EMA and a test into the 10-week moving average, which it held. GEV was a beneficiary and up 6.7% on the executive orders, made new all-time highs on Friday, approaching a profit-taking zone, but still a very strong stock. PWR is probably one of the leading construction companies for electric power plants, grid infrastructure, and again, this was able to make new all-time highs and break through this big cup with handle pivot area. Finally got out of that this week. Robinhood, new all-time closing highs on a weekly basis, now pushing into that old 85 high from the IPO back in 2021. Avgo, new all-time highs on the week, again very strong with a massive rally off of the lows of the April 4th week. Cloudtrail also into new high territory. AVAV with a massive earnings gap and run. Again, this is what you want to see with your earnings gaps. Very strong numbers here. They're big in defense and drone manufacturing. Micron with a strong earnings report, however, rallied 35% going into earnings and up over 200% from the lows. So backed off and closed around the ADMA, which is perfectly normal. They're a big beneficiary of the data center build out using their flash memory and memory products. WGS had a big week. Not sure what the news is on this one, but this one had a rough reaction to earnings last quarter. But again, this was one that was on the watch list back here, very choppy during the March and April bear market. Not bear market, but again, we did drop 21% on the S&P, 27% on the NASDAQ, and the stock had a lot of volatility, but it's a biotech stock that does have a lot of growth in it, and it's in the AI area of testing. ARM is a stock that's resurged itself in the semiconductor area, approaching all-time highs, had a nice V bottom here. FN, contract manufacturer based out of the Cayman Islands, new all-time highs. Several contract manufacturers have been strong, and we've seen several of them led by CLS. Carvana is down on the week, but again, back above its short-term moving averages. Taiwan Semiconductor, new all-time highs. Again, key player, manufactures semiconductors for NVIDIA and most all of the fabless semiconductor manufacturers. Oddity is a stock we're watching in the consumer area. Again, massive drop on a huge secondary offering by the founder. Stock recovered, backed off, and is now resurging off the 21 EMA. VRT in the power or data center area, strong week up 7%. IREN in the Bitcoin mining and data center area, big numbers here, triple digits. Earnings and sales, huge week, up 33% on several stablecoin announcements. Huge wall of blue volume here, huge move. Again, lower price stock, but one to keep an eye on with this very strong, going from losing money to making money, triple digit growth. Snowflake also up 5% on the week. Again, a liquid leader, riding along the ADMA into new high territory. Dutch Bros bouncing off its 10-week moving average this week and 50-day moving average, several tests and hold. Again, it's a name we like long term. Cisco, new all-time highs in the networking area. Uber, very strong week, up 9.2%. And all you have to do is listen to Ted. He's made several presentations on Uber. Rambus with a huge week, up 7% in the semiconductor area. NRG broke out to new all-time highs on Trump's executive data center announcements. Squatted a little bit on Friday, but was able to break through this big gap consolidation post earnings back here. Again, this is the largest generator of natural gas power in the United States. They bought another utility, and that's doubling their production of natural gas, mostly for the central and northeastern United States, to provide energy for the data center. So this is a play to watch. CyberArk, building a cup base. Advanced Micro Devices up 12%. Again, this has been a huge recovery as the data center, another data center GPU play, well above its 200-day moving average now. And now the shorter term weekly moving average is now turning up 200 days, going to start flattening on this. Firm up 9%. Tapestry strong on the week, breaking back through this cup with handle base. Shake Shack, huge base here, coming back up to these highs from December of last year. These levels are going back to 2021. And again, this will be a breakthrough all-time high. So a big, huge IPO base here on this particular name coming up against these old highs. Incidentally, you can see here, this is a closing monthly high and just shy of, well, might be a closing weekly high. Let's see, that close was 138.76. So just shy of this closing high back here. So definitely a name to keep an eye on. Light Lumentum, nice action this week, up 5.6%. TKO is a stock building a nice, broke out of a nice cup with handle base, traded real tight for the last week and a half and closed really at an all-time, basically an all-time high here. All-time weekly closing high. Again, we talked about these contract manufacturers. Flextronic with a huge week. ASM Lithography, put this name on the list as a potential turnaround play here. Now trading above its 200-day moving averages for several weeks. And again, moving average alignment coming through on the long-term side, where all the short-term moving averages are now crossing the 40-week moving average. So again, Coupang with a huge follow-through week. And this has been on the watch list for quite a few weeks now. Again, into the profit-taking zone. Disney, big base here. Just watching this, again, not a super sexy name, but approaching this old 123.74 high. EQT in the natural gas area down 3.5% as natural gas had. Well, if you look at the UNG, had this basic double bottom retest of this 1504 area and closed very strong on Friday, up 5.6%. So again, several of these natural gas gain EQT is at actually all-time highs here. Well, pushing up into these 2014 highs. So again, names to watch as natural gas exports, as well as it being a big fuel for the data center. Hammer Sports with a new high after this nice earnings gap consolidation and finally breaking through this post-earnings consolidation. Coinbase, new weekly closing high. Again, price has been higher, but never this high on a weekly basis. Like Robinhood, still shy of its IPO highs of 429.54. Oscar Health, volatile name, but again, potentially the beneficiary of the new bill, and surprisingly no Medicare Advantage plan cuts, which sent the stock skyrocketing last week. So one to potentially watch. Urban Outfitters setting up in this post-earnings gap base. Oracle post-earnings gap tightness, up 2.4% on the week, but trading very tight after the earnings gap. Coherent breaking through the 200-day moving average this week. Again, many data center networking plays are looking pretty good. Coherent being one of them, SMCI, which is a name that had some accounting issues last year. Tried breaking through this base, but backed off on Friday. Let's get back on track. Copper, Southern Copper, with a nice weekly shift here, up 9.6% on the week as copper traded over $5.20 per pound. Again, breaking through the 200-day moving average. Williams in the oil and gas and pipeline transportation. Beautiful breakout of this base this week. Transodime, huge long-term base here, broke through that. This is also a aerospace and defense play, which was just a huge grinder back here. Again, they make several components for the aerospace industry. And again, I don't have these on the list, but you can see Boeing. Boeing is now recovering into a new stage 2 uptrend after multiple years post-COVID of stage 4 decline and stage 4 basing. And also ERJ, another airline manufacturer, looking pretty good here. So again, this area, this is a big supplier to those breaking out here. BWX Technologies manufactures nuclear reactors and components for the government. Beautiful 38% deep cup and basically a 2-week tight. So if you want a more less volatile name in the nuclear area, this is one that's just been riding its ADMA very nicely after ants on the cup breakout. Not as fast as Oklo or some of the other plays. Speaking of, Oklo down 4.6% on the week. Couple trips down to the 21 EMA, so it's had a little volatility lately. Hinge Health, relative strength making new highs and broke through the IPO base this week. Definitely vacillated above and below it and very choppy on an intraday basis, but when you pull it into the weekly, position size this correctly, this could be a new IPO base breakout. Astera Labs, again, in the networking area, had the shakeout down to the 50-day, huge day on Thursday, gave it all back on Friday. This is the type of choppiness we're talking about, some of the individual names. Again, probably you want to see this thing ultimately break through 100 and clear it. But this is a big position for Gavin Baker, who's a big fund, venture capitalist. This is his biggest position, as well as the Contra Fund's been taking positions in this. And again, definitely one you want to keep an eye on, but extremely volatile and was looking very promising on Thursday. Big volume on the week, was looking good, but closed down 2%. SMR, another nuclear name that basically been chopping down to the 200 or the 21-day, but looking good. Mr. Cooper and the mortgage servicing looking good. Rocket Lab, huge week, up 17%. Live Nation, cup and handle base, watching that name. ERJ mentioned it here with Transodime. SMCI, Nice week, big volume, up 5%. Had some big pocket pivots here early in the week. Roku is another name watching for a potential early turn. Reddit, another name that failed post earnings back here after it peaked, back above the 200-day moving average. Nebus looking very good here after breaking out. CoreWeave again down 12%, but still backed off a little bit, but entitled to after this massive run. Sale, get another IPO base here, up 0.75% after having a pretty decent week, but chopped back down, closing below the 80 MA, above the 21 EMA. Lemonade down 5% on the week. Dollar General, Guardian Health building a base. Freeport-McMoRan, another copper play, which broke. It's been chopping above the 200-day, gapped up on copper, heading above 520, and closed down a little bit on Friday. So some potential new merchandise. Quantum Stock IONQ down slightly on the week. Tempest down 2%. Celestica, contract manufacturing, new all-time highs. Spotify, new all-time highs. Palantir down 9% on Friday on the Russell rebalance, as this is no longer a small cap stock and moving out. So we'll see how this handles the next few days or the next couple of weeks. But again, nothing wrong with Palantir, just a rebalance. DoorDash, huge week up 9%. ATI and especially metal space. Seagate grinding higher, not viable. SoFi FinTech had a big week up 13%. And Kratos, we talked about. Transmedics, after getting hit with a short report last week, reclaimed its 21 and 8 EMA. Next tracker, building a base. Roblox has been grinding higher. Ollie's broke out this week. Take-Two Interactive tight. And that is it for the weekly review. Again, thank you for your time this week. Have a nice 4th of July week, everyone. And overall, if you'd like to ask me any questions, my email is todd@revereasset.com. My Twitter is @ToddMichael70. If you'd like to become a client, our number is 855-REAL-WEALTH or 855-732-5932. Our website is revereasset.com. We appreciate all likes, retweets, reposts, and follows. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.